All right, recording's on. First couple topics are from Jesse. Welcome, Jesse. So this regards a couple of your PRs. Let's start with optional yield. Are you there, Jesse? You hearing me? Are other folks hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay. Well, let's move on in the meantime. Joseph, your topic about tracking work.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, twofold. One, as we reach to end of 2024, planning for 2025 from Bloomberg perspective, I was trying to find out, how we can help the community, what the active work being done is, and which parts we can chip in and those kind of things. And the second part was also in the 2 months ago in the Ceph developer monthlies, I presented the idea of having a S3 focused users and developers together to see what should be a priority, pain points, what can we as a group do better to make Ceph better and the S3 interface to it better kind of thing. And recently I noticed that, some features were being developed, it got merged, yay, but I was also, wanted to see how to track what folks are working on, what features are in the pipeline for the gateway from an S3 perspective, are there critical things, more of that. And wanted to see if there was a place that I'm missing to see this stuff, or how I would see this stuff. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
So the only thing that I would really point you at is the Ceph Developer Summit that we did. That was earlier in the year, and essentially just compiled a pad of features that people are interested in working on. But it's not a very formal list that has deadlines or priorities.
So it's the general thought that, as that is the living and breathing thing that we throw things in and remove things off as they get done, kind of. Is that the general thought behind it? It's our wish list of things that either people are actively working on, or things that, hey, if someone new, or let's say for us, in my case, hey, something we want to chip in on, hey, this is something that is found to be useful for the community or something we are missing and no one's actively working on it, we can pick it up kind of thing. That's where I would track that?
No, I don't think the document is a living document. This is like a snapshot of what we thought should be done way back then. I don't think there is a living document, to be honest, unless I'm missing something.
Because I think Ozan posted in the chat as well, I've heard people mention there's a Trello board somewhere that used to do something like this, but I couldn't seem to find anything associated with it. Would it, I guess, to the group here, if, let's say, from at least my perspective / Bloomberg's perspective, 25 planning, if I want to say, hey, we want to help pitch in for feature X, how, do I just go hunt down features we are missing? Or is there a wish list that I can help?
So the only thing that we have for that is on our Redmine under the RGW project, there is a separate tracker, a feature tracker, separate from bugs and backports.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's not. It's I mean unlike the bugs in the tracker that are being this is what people are going to work on, especially like the high priority ones. Anything that is on the feature list could be something that is there for a couple of years and nobody going to ever do. And there are also features that are being worked on that are not in feature list because it's not mandatory to put features there. So I wouldn't trust Redmine to be like the plan.
Would it be beneficial for us as a group to have some, it doesn't matter where, somewhere, to put this so that at least there is some visibility for each other? And oh, so and so is working on blah kind of thing.
I think it's a great idea. I'm kind of struggling with that myself. I mean, to me, the solution is to just attend all stand up and the weekly refactoring meetings, and then you get some kind of a picture of what's being worked on. Usually, it comes from the other way around. Like if you guys in Bloomberg need something, and you're like the same thing that you did with bug notifications, right? You needed enhancements, so you addressed the kind of the lead for this specific feature, and then we work together on the feature.
So the reason for the ask is, yes, there are specific things we are looking for and stuff. It makes it a lot easier to come to these meetings and ask, but it's also more of like, we don't know what we don't know. There are things I'm like, oh, that would be a very useful thing for us to have. We didn't even know that was a thing kind of question. That's why, again, this is the reason why I was searching through to just gather general information on what's actively going on or someone's working on it. Like, hey, can we help? Whether we test, validate, whatever be.
So the kind of the tricky part is that anyone in this group that belongs to some kind of an organization have their own internal mechanisms to track work, right? Because this is being tracked. Like I guess, your boss or whatever knows what you're working on, and this is being tracked. But this has nothing to do with the upstream of Ceph. So your timelines, your deadlines, your priorities, and so on are internal to the organization you work for. And therefore, it's pretty amorphic when it comes to the upstream project.
I 100% agree. Like every organization will have their own thing. Do we need something similar for upstream? I guess is my general question because, again, as I mentioned, the part of Ceph, when I talked about this at the CDM, one of the things I was asked was like, hey, where are the gaps and whatnot? And I started looking to find some information, because I didn't know where this information existed. And from the sounds of it, it does not exist.
So,
like if someone who wants to use Ceph and want to see, hey, we just want to see what the roadmap, if I may, for Tentacle, for example, let's say for T-Release, what features are even on the list that may make it a Tentacle? There's no guarantees, to your point, there's no, but at least someone's working on, there's a possibility of it coming in versus no one's doing anything. This is not going to happen in T.
So if you want to look at the kind of tentative list, I think what Casey said regarding the that I mean there was like a discussion on what we're planning for Tentacle. I mean, there's no guarantee, there's no kind of official commitment of any sort, but this would be like a list of intent, like what the intent is. But could be that things will be in Tentacle that just came up after the meeting and will just be there, even if they were not in the original plan, and the other way around as well. So I was wondering, Casey, why did we stop using Trello?
Apparently that was paid for by Red Hat and they stopped. So yeah. It's I think it's still, can you guys access the link? I'm not sure, but it's limited to like 10 users or something that can write, and so we're not using it anymore.
Could we go
Right.
to if people miss that? Could we go to the Monday meeting, the steering committee, and ask if we could get some funding from the Linux Foundation to pay for Trello? Like we just did all that governance work for something.
That's an option. I remember Patrick suggesting, or he found some kind of agile features that Redmine itself has that is more Trello-like that we might try out instead, even if it's just for the RGW component.
It's reasonable as long as it's not Jira.
Fair. Okay, so it sounds like Trello used to be there, Trello no longer there. We ideally would like something similar, doesn't matter where, that would be useful. Right, I will, again, start poking around and see if I can help and at least put together.
Yeah, and
It's something worth trying.
even on Trello for RGW, we were essentially just using the CDS planning meeting to put stuff in there and not really follow up on it. So yeah, kind of what Yuval was mentioning on the disconnect between upstream and downstream planning. It's been hard for me to keep an accurate roadmap for releases. So it's just been very informal, but I'm very open to ideas to improve.
I think if we're gonna get like a decent tool, and I doubt that Redmine has a decent tool, then again, it's not something very accurate, but I mean, you can have like a monthly update. That could be a good enough resolution for the for the update, because I mean Josephine, the main pain point is that if I need to update my internal Jira tasks and this, like, that won't happen.
Yeah, that's very practical because no one's going to update 20 things.
Right, exactly. But if we're gonna have something like maybe a monthly or 2 monthly, like bi-monthly kind of sync up meetings where everybody's saying what he's working on, and then we get some kind of picture and update the tool, then it could be small enough overhead for the thing to actually happen.
More manageable.
Yeah.
That is fair. So it's more of just a curiosity question. I'll also, again, poke some of the other leads and see if they do something interesting to do the same thing, because I would imagine every component has the same problem. So, right. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to like Redmine as a tool. I think we're doing a pretty good job with the bug trackers because we have a bug scrub every week. Its attendance isn't great, but maybe we could do like a monthly scrub of the feature tracker and try to keep it up to date, or whatever agile stuff that we want to use to track it. But if there isn't attendance, then it's not going to be very useful.
Sounds fair. Thank you.
All right. Jesse, is your mic working?
I think it is. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yay! Sorry about that earlier. So I have 2 items. The first one is mostly informational. Since I haven't looked at Ceph in a long time, there are lots of new components, and going through RGW, I was asked to peek at some of the async stuff, and I noticed, I found optional yield, and of course we're calling it everywhere. And I went, that looks like an optional, so maybe I can implement it in terms of stat optional. And turns out that's actually pretty straightforward, and you can do it. Measuring the performance difference, it's basically identical. It may be just a tiny bit faster in micro benchmarks. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because it does have some extra move construction support, but it's basically indistinguishable. So that's the good news. But you don't really get a lot for it, other than, and this is kind of the thing that I wanted to float to the group, it does give you all of the other member functions and functionalities is still optional, like the monadic interfaces, comparators, things like that. On the other hand, since it isn't actually an optional and we really use it to kind of mean either or, maybe we don't want to encourage that. And my perception is that it's actually the latter. We kind of don't want to encourage that and maybe not really touch it for now. So I have two questions. One, does anyone actually have a use for those? And two, if not, does anyone mind if I go ahead and close that PR? You probably haven't all seen it, of course, so I'm not expecting that. But I'll take silence as no one minds. Okay, next item. Does anyone mind if I move RGW admin to its own directory and fiddle with the file names and things like that? Does anyone have scripts or anything that are depending on that other than parts of the build system?
What would be the reason? Just for
I want to do quite a bit of work on that tool, and having it jammed into the same source directory as a million other files is both cognitively strange and starts to make it a little difficult to organize, because I'm going to be adding more code modules and I'm splitting it apart into smaller pieces. And I don't necessarily want to clutter that top level directory up. It starts to feel like it deserves its own home, if that makes sense. But it is subjective.
It's a big complicated binary. I don't have any objection to having more than one source file in it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a separate binary, so yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, cool. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, I think my only minor concern would just be about preserving like Git history. And I see that you've done a rename, so that's fine. But as we split things out, then we'll kind of lose track of some of it. But I think better organization would outweigh the loss of Git history.
I think so too. Yeah, it's a lot of the difficulty looking in that tool is just it's many thousands of lines of things kind of stuck together in one spot, and they have a lot of different kinds of functionality that would be easier to understand if it were split apart. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, other thoughts on this? Okay, moving on to the last topic from Alex about the STSPR. Believe that it's mostly a discussion with Preetha though, right? And without her here, I'm not sure how fruitful the discussion will be, but do you want to raise the topic?
Yeah, sure. I was just planning to giving a quick summary, or I guess I just need a couple of thoughts. So I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with STS, but if you are, please let me know. I'm happy to discuss. But there's kind of been a little bit of a discussion. So OIDC and like all these like JWK, JWT stuff is pretty industry standard. It's not like something AWS, for example, created. And there's a lot of different ways and a lot of RFCs about how validation of signatures happens. And it seems like, from my understanding, Pritha wants it to be very close to what AWS does, how they validate tokens specifically. It seems like that is sometimes, well, one, we're reverse engineering, so we don't know actually what happens, but it seems like they're only using like a subset of JW, like the whole JWT specification. So it's more of like a philosophical question, I guess, of like, do we want the way Ceph does it close to AWS, or do we want it closer to what the RFCs say? Because the RFCs have a lot of features that I'm guessing AWS doesn't support. So do we want to only limit to that? Because then extensions would all, by definition, not be AWS compatible. I guess they're enhancements, but yeah, I'm just wondering how closely you want to follow AWS versus overall what, all the possible enhancements we could make, because I think we could get support a lot more different systems that way. Hopefully that made sense.
I'm not Preetha, but the one question I did have is just for some of our customers who are doing like the multi-cloud thing or the hybrid cloud thing, would it be possible if we did add extensions to have a strict compatibility mode that disables them just so people don't start relying on stuff that won't work with AWS? I think that would be the main concern.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, so let's say like an enhancement, for example, you would prefer to have a flag that if it's not in AWS, you want it to be turned off. Like, even though it's an extra validation method, which is technically, I guess, better, but because it's not in AWS, we wouldn't want it on by default.
That's an interesting question. Like, I think if the extra validation method would let more people log in who couldn't otherwise, I'm not certain. I don't actually know enough about AWS validation to say. I could see the argument going either way depending on what the extension was. But I think that might alleviate those concerns. Like if we had a strict AWS compatibility STS mode or something like that, that like no more things would work with it turned off. Or yeah, with it turned off, no things would work that wouldn't work on AWS, I guess.
Yeah, the difficulty is AWS doesn't do a great job of saying everything it can. Like it might have, like we'd have to like reverse engineer it versus like some sort
That's
of.
That's a point. I don't know. That was my main thought, but I don't want to block you with it. I mean, I do want to defer to Preet in this matter.
Yeah, I appreciate the thought. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. I mean, we're just having a lot of discussions right now, so if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to comment on the PR. But yeah, I guess if no one's here a super expert on STS, then thank you for your time.
Yeah, I personally don't have strong feelings whether we're trying to be super AWS compatible here, as long as our security model is sane. And I'm not an expert on the security side, so would have to defer to others.
My personal take is just keep it with the RFC standards so that at the very least we have something to point to on why Ceph does the way it does, versus reverse engineering something that we think is how it's supposed to work. I mean, at the very least we have some documentation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. But the RFCs, I mean, there's also a ton, but at least it's an RFC that's out there. Because it's a pretty common standard, this whole token stuff. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how other. I guess I could do some research how other, not even like storage providers, but other websites or apps do it. So that's something I could research too.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that this Wednesday meeting is a good time for Preetha, but maybe it would help if we try to schedule a separate meeting just for this subject and make sure that all the relevant people can make it.
Yep, that's a good idea. Thanks. Is there anyone on the security side that you think would make sense to loop in as well?
Marcus Watts is the one I had in mind, who's on the RGW team. I can start an email thread and we can kind of add people to that and discuss a time, I guess probably after the new year.
It might also be worth looping in Sage McTaggart if we want to make sure we have a sane security model.
Okay. Alex, I'm not sure I have your email address. Would you link it in chat for me?
Sure. I could Slack you it actually, so it doesn't get lost.
Perfect.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this or new topics for the agenda?
I just had a question. Do we know who's handling Barbican integration for Ceph? I had Deepika asking me about it, so I wasn't sure who to point to. Maybe Marcus?
If it's part of OpenStack, probably Marcus.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't think that anybody's done anything with it in a long time. All of the new server-side encryption stuff that Marcus did was specific to Vault. And even though Barbican, I understand, kind of wraps a Vault, I don't know that we have the same functionality there, but I don't know if anybody's actually looked into it.
Okay, yeah, I think Deepika's looking into it. There are a couple of trackers that she's trying to resolve. But she needs some help.
Okay, yeah, then Marcus would probably be the person. Welcome, Radislav. You have anything to discuss?
Hello. Only one thing, a follow-up to one of the regular RGW meetings. Basically, a design very early, actually not even design in the meaning of high levels design or something like that, just requirements gathering doc about RGW's needs towards so-called multi object radius transactions. It's a follow-up to one of the sessions during the Dev Summit at Ceph. I'm trying to put in one single place all situations, all use cases, whenever RGW is interested in modifying more than one RGW, more than one radius object at time. If somebody knows anything about such use cases, if you could put even a new chapter without elaborated description or something like that, just new chapter, new bullet point into the doc, I would be really grateful.
Okay, the bucket index transaction is the main one that looks like you have covered.
The question is whether it's the sole one, plus, of course, all about the details. I believe a similar doc will be issued for CFFS.
Okay, I added a new section about metadata updates because things like user metadata also have index objects for lookups by access key, email, etc.
I wasn't aware. Thanks.
We don't have strong consistency for that, so if it crashes or gets interrupted in the middle, then becomes inconsistent. So multi-object transaction would help with that, but I'm not sure how multi-object transactions could really work.
Well, I'm afraid that so-called full-blown multi transactions cannot, at least efficiently, but perhaps the outcome of such docs could be, I hope it will be actually, that we don't need the semantic of the strong multi-object transactions. Perhaps it could be something like modifying a single Redis object plus some extra OMAP things that at the moment as the only way to store OMAP is having an object and perhaps another object in Redis, that this could be remodeled to allow for handling such cases efficiently. Something like updating a full-blown update, including even a data field of Redis object, plus extra, even complicated OMAP transactions.
Okay, Radek, looks like folks outside of Red Hat IBM don't have access
Yes,
there.
I see. I think I will move this to GitHub or Etherpad. By GitHub, I mean Gist. I'm not sure whether it's possible to update their. One second. Creating Etherpad. I just created this.
All right, thanks. I've copied a link into our meeting agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Radek. Anything else for the agenda? Sina, I saw that you had some follow-up questions on the bucket full sync PR. Do you want to stick around and discuss?
Yeah, sure. Hey.
All right. Well, thanks everybody else. I think we'll cancel next week and probably New Year's Day. So let's plan on.
Wait, you think we're canceling Christmas and we're only probably canceling New Year's?
Well, I won't be here, but if you guys want to meet, you're more than welcome.
Fair enough.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Well,